The human toll of overseas drone strikes can be hard to grasp, hard to even imagine. A team from Pitch Interactive, a data visualization studio in Berkeley, California, have put together this infographic, creating a visual of drone strikes, deaths, and a timeline of related events in Pakistan since 2004. Now, in Pakistan alone, it's estimated that over 3,000 casualties have come at the hands of U.S. drone strikes, and only 1.5% of these deaths have been high-profile targets. The rest? Civilians, children, and alleged combatants. Joining us now is Wesley Grubbs, a data visualizer and one of the designers of the infographic. I want to just let this graphic play for a while. I know that from your website you claim that this project aims to bring light on the topic of drones, not necessarily to speak for or against it, but to inform and to allow the public, essentially, to see for themselves whether they can or cannot support drone usage. So what's the story, behind this project further than that, Wesley? What was the aim here in terms of why you decided to compile this data and why visualize it?
Sure. Well, why visualize it? We'd visualize it because we're a data visualization studio, but the topic itself became very interesting to us because we're led to believe that these drone strikes that we're doing in Pakistan and elsewhere in the world have this sort of laser precision, and that we're only getting the bad guys and the imminent threats to Americans. And once we actually started researching this topic, we realized that's not quite the case. Yes, we are getting some bad guys. That's great. However, there's a huge collateral damage. There's a huge civilian and casualty rate. And this other group is what actually troubled us the most. Everyone's sort of asking, well, who is this other? And that's what we're asking too. Are they military or are they civilians? And the problem is the Obama administration calls any male able to fight male in Pakistan who's killed in a drone strike, they're automatically coined as a military combatant. So if a high-profile target, his house is hit and his neighbor's house is hit, and his neighbor happens to be 3 or 4 males, those males are immediately coined as military combatants, and we found that very troubling.
And Wesley, I've been following America's controversial use of drone strikes, not just in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, really across the world for quite some time now, and I find it to be legally dubious. And I think many people are concerned about the secrecy of this. So by creating something so compelling, so visual, so almost easy to understand, was the aim in part to spark a conversation, almost to surprise people?
Of course. I won't hide that fact. We want to shock people in a way. And what we tried to do, though, with this was not just to shock people with the number of casualties, but to shock people with the amount of stuff that we really don't know. One thing about this data, this is not CIA data. Like you said, they're not disclosing their information. This is data collected from reporters on the ground and people actually conducting their research on the ground, much information as they can and then relaying that back. And so these are estimated numbers, actually. They're not exact figures. And what we're doing is we're taking the minimum possible numbers, the maximum, and we're getting sort of an average of those to give our estimates. Because there's a lot of unknowns here in the drone strikes just because that data is not available to us.
And one thing that is available and that the visualization actually clearly shows is how this has been augmented from the Bush years and the Bush doctrine, which you mentioned, of imminent threat, to under the Obama administration. We've really seen a peak. First, there is one visual that we want to show. This is in 2006, of course, under Bush's administration. On October 30th, at least 69 children were killed on this specific date. And what's great about the visualization is it has so many data points that you can actually click on all of it. But what I wanted to ask you about, Wesley, was the vertical lines show strikes spike right before Obama's inauguration, and then essentially after that, they continue to peak. Could you speak to why that is?
Yeah, we found that interesting too. I can say personally, I consider myself an Obama supporter. This is one issue where I absolutely don't support Obama, and it was sort of troubling to see this because it kind of went against some ideas that I had about Obama. However, when we started first plotting out the data, we didn't see everything you see now. We just started seeing sort of plots and points in a graph, and I saw this huge spike. And my first assumption was to attribute that to Obama, but that wasn't the case. As we did more and more research and we got the data from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and we started discussing this with them as well. We discovered that that increase right before Obama took office was because General Musharraf resigned in Pakistan. And what we discovered is while he was the leader in Pakistan, he had a lot more clout in Washington and with the CIA. He was able to sort of thwart a lot of drone attacks. With him gone and out of the way, the CIA basically had free reign. So it's not really fair to attribute the drone attack increase just to Obama. However, once Obama took office, he definitely opened up the gas and he really cranked those out as well.
And Wesley, as I mentioned to you earlier, I have a lot of those similar concerns. And more importantly, one thing that you touched on is the imminent threat as a justification, which we've heard this administration and the previous administration use. And I know that this isn't necessarily, specifically featured in your visualization, but the reason I bring it up is because the similarities between the leaks around the white paper of what that imminent threat really means is very contradictory. And I think this is part of the what you're talking about, this being shrouded in secrecy. We now hear reports last week that the CIA program, which as you say has been able to act without any oversight, is now going to be shifted into the Pentagon. What do you hope to do? I mean, are you guys going to follow up on this? There have been drone strikes, not just in Pakistan, in Yemen and Somalia. I understand and heard that you might very well be creating that visualization. I mean, how are you going to complement this, and when can we expect that?
Well, one thing about this current visualization that we made is it is live. So as there are new drone strikes, we're going to keep adding them, new drone strikes in Pakistan. I guess what we're hoping to achieve with this is what is kind of currently happening in Washington. There's a lot of pressure on Washington and politicians to do something about this. And I think that is one big cause why the CIA might lose their sort of free token of do what they want here, and it might go to the Pentagon. So we might actually see a little bit more oversight once the Pentagon takes this. And I'm really hoping that people will be aware of this and will add more pressure on Washington for transparency and a little bit more information as to why we're doing this and how. As far as Yemen and Somalia, I mean, I would love to have a data set of every drone strike from every country, everywhere around the world at all times. We used Pakistan because it was the most comprehensive data set that we had, and it was the most reliable. But in the future, definitely, I want to look at Yemen and Somalia because our tactics there are very different than what they are in Pakistan. So we definitely intend to do something with that in the near future.
Well, Wesley, be sure to join us back here at HuffPost Live when you do. It's a pleasure to really have you, and I'm actually personally a big fan of your work, so thanks for doing it.